From the burning mesas of the Sonoran Desert to the slot machine-clad boardwalks of New Jersey, it's the Imaginarium with Scott and Todd. I'm Scott Colbert.
And I'm the horror nerd, Todd Staruch.
And this week, Todd and I talk about the bald, naked man covered in gold, the Oscar.
Hooray for Hollywood. They hire fellas whose physiques are good. And then they tell them they're the perfect shape men to act like ape men. And they convince them they should. They make them fret and yell, oh. And people think they're swell, oh. Hooray for Hollywood. It's really got me hooray. 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 Hooray for Hollywood.
Oh, I was going to say, listen, what I do on the weekends is nobody's business, okay?
Well, you know, there is that too, but I wasn't going to mention it. Do you think people would be in a rush to get an Oscar if it was anatomically correct?
Huh. You know, well, maybe not.
Where would they hold it, first of all? Because they always seem to grab it around the middle.
Exactly.
Those are the kind of thoughts I have, as George Carlin would say, that kept me out of the really good schools.
Yes.
And we are going to talk about the Oscars. I know there's been a lot of controversy with it being a very white year at the Oscars. And I don't really necessarily even want to get into that because it seems like all we do is bitch and moan about stuff like that. But I think we really should probably at least touch on it just a little bit to get it out of the way.
Yeah, you know, I was wondering, you know, as I thought about the fact that we were going to talk about the Oscars, I was thinking about that, like, how much time should we spend on that? I'm so sick of every single thing now in life devolving into some kind of controversy.
Yeah.
Like I said when I wrote a Facebook post about, you know, Will and Jada Pinkett Smith, and I said, look, obviously not being a black man, I have no frame of reference for what it's like to be a black person in America today. Having said that, you know, Hollywood allows people to live a life of wealth and privilege, and Hollywood has been very good to a lot of these people. But then award season rolls around, and now all of a sudden everybody's upset. Yeah. Is there a lack of diversity in Hollywood? There may very well be. I haven't really analyzed any statistics. So there may very well be a shortage of representation for blacks, Latinos, Asians, what have you. I honestly don't know. I just love movies, you know, and if a black actor or actress turns in a phenomenal performance, I'm all about it.
I agree with you 100%. And I think one of the problems that I have with it is you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. So last year we had 12 Years a Slave, and that got a lot of nominations, not very many awards, and people cried out that it was racism because they were nominated but they didn't get the awards. This year, you know, there were no black people basically being nominated. And then you've got a third area where if somebody is a minority and does get nominated and does win, well, that was just a token Oscar.
Yeah, I you know, honestly, that's a great point, Scott. I never really even considered that. What I would, you know, and maybe somewhere down the road we have, like we'll have Jack back on or something to, you know, to talk about it from his perspective. I can't help but wonder, though, is it true endemic racism, or is it just, hey, this is how the chips sort of fell? I don't live and work in Hollywood, so I don't know if studio execs are sitting around like actively deciding not to employ people of various races. I don't know.
You can't make a movie without a script. And the writers predominantly are white. And it's not that they intentionally write a white script. You write what you know. I'm not going to sit here and write about somebody who grew up in the project because I don't know anything about growing up in the projects. And I think that's probably the same with screenwriters in Hollywood is, they didn't grow up in the projects or whatever the case may be. I don't want to see like I'm generalizing every minority lives in the project.
I know what you mean.
Because I know somebody's going to bitch about
that. Direct all your comments to Scott Colbert, please. The one thing I will say, though, is from what I have read, the Academy is looking to change their voting block, and they're going to start examining people and dropping them from the voting ranks if they haven't been active in the industry for a certain period of time. I do think there is some validity to saying, and I don't mean now to reverse it and sort of make a sweeping generalization against white people, but an 85-year-old white actor, say, who hasn't made a film in 30 years, probably doesn't understand what Hollywood and what filmmaking is like today. So maybe we do need an influx of younger voting members who are in touch with, just the realities of life today.
Well, I think you're right about that. And I think that's probably just endemic to any kind of area of life, whether it's Hollywood and movies or politics. And, Christ, look at how many, we talked about this last week or the week before, how many old farts are in Congress.
Yeah.
Who probably should have retired about 30 years ago.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And if the Academy does go in that direction, I applaud it. It can only make things better. Having said that, I almost, and I don't want to say let's take a real quick moment to say, let's face facts of what the Oscars is. It's a bunch of people getting together to pat themselves on the back. You're not winning a Nobel Prize for medicine because you cured pancreatic cancer here, so you're going to be upset that you didn't win a self-congratulatory award. Boo-hoo,
It's a citywide circle jerk is pretty much what it is.
Yeah, and look, I'm into it. I love movies. I love the glamour. I love movie stars. I really do. I'm very curious to see how Chris Rock is going to weave the controversy into his monologue. There's a good article about it in Entertainment Weekly this week where one of the Oscar producers said it could be a really unforgettable Oscar telecast, either for very good reasons or for very bad reasons, depending on how it gets handled. But Chris Rock's a pretty sly comic. I think he'll do a good job with it.
Well, he hosted once before.
Yeah.
And I thought he did a good job then.
Me too. Yeah, me too.
And I've always liked Chris Rock. Because he never actually played favorites with anybody. He pretty much criticizes everyone, black, white, gay, straight, oriental, whatever. He's an equal opportunity offender. Yes, thank you.
Yep, much like myself.
Yes. Yeah. I don't care what show. I'm going to say a joke that's going to offend you eventually. So
exactly.
Deal with it. I would like to go back to the old controversies. Like when there was a streaker that went across stage.
Yep. Or when Betty Davis and Joan Crawford really hated each other.
Yeah. Or when Marlon Brando had the Indian accept the award for him.
Yeah, good stuff like that. Speaking of the streaker, that was one of the great all-time Oscar moments. And David Niven was perfect without missing a beat. He said, and I'm paraphrasing a famous line about the streaker not being afraid to show everyone his shortcomings.
Yeah.
It was great.
That's probably one of the greatest moments in TV history.
Absolutely.
Because you can't talk about the Oscars without at least alluding to that particular event. And that happened, 40, 50 years ago.
Oh God, yeah, I don't even know. I didn't see it live. I've only know about it from movie lore, you know.
What was the first Oscar telecast that you remember seeing?
I don't know that I could pinpoint it, but I was definitely young, like 9 or 10 maybe, because my grandmother was very into award shows. I mean, we watched all the award shows. We watched Miss America, you know, Miss Universe, like anything that where they gave away an award, we would watch it. Um, but I remember the ones I remember more clearly are when E.T. started winning awards, and in that era, you know, and then I really got into it as my real love of movies grew. Um, and I watched it more for like the spectacle of it. Again, it's people giving each other awards. It's like when Car and Driver magazine, which is run by car companies, gives out car awards. No, there's no bias there or anything. But
no, not at all.
Yeah. But I do. I admit it. I like the glamour and the red carpet to see what the stars are going to wear. Oh my God, I'm a woman. I just realized that.
Well, no, but
call me Teresa from now on.
Just on weekends.
Okay.
But you're right about that. And I did the same thing to a certain extent. I think the first time that I remember actually sitting down and watching them was probably maybe 76 or something when Rocky was nominated.
Okay.
Because I loved Rocky when it came out, and I still love it today. Yeah, it's a really good movie. But I was actively rooting for it, and so I think that's pretty much why I watched it. And then I got hooked on it because everybody seemed so suave and so cultured, well-spoken, and eloquent. And I actually do think people were a lot more eloquent 50, 60 years ago, 40 years ago than they are today. If you go back and look at like some of the game shows and some of the talk shows from bygone eras, you don't hear the way, or like the way that I talk, with the ums and the ahs and the pauses. They're very cultured, very well spoken, and I kind of like that with the Oscars. And I like the dance numbers and the music, and it was always cool kind of seeing these actors out of character, so to speak.
Yeah, it's interesting, Scott. You and I both are very much into music and film and TV and stuff. Movies have always been a passion of mine. And, a lot of people chalk it up. Oh, it's a frivolous industry. And I guess in some ways it is. But people forget that throughout history, even back to the Middle Ages, like in the courts of kings, the entertainers were very highly prized and highly valued. Like if you were the court jester, we call that, now today we poke fun at that. But if you could entertain the king, you guaranteed yourself a long and prosperous life.
Oh, yeah.
And think about Shakespeare and plays written, there's plays written 1,000 years ago that are still performed today.
No, and I do too. And I think it plays a very important part, not only of culture, but of recreation as well. You live, particularly today, when you live the type of lifestyles that we live, and everything is go, 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 go. You really kind of need time to decompress. And watching a movie, going to a concert, listening to some music, I mean, that's a perfect way to get your mind out of the reality of whatever's going on that day. I mean, it's an escape. And that's what, I love movies for a lot of other reasons aside from that. But that's one of the main reasons that I love movies so much, is they allow me to escape, and reading, I should say, too. And they allow me to experience something when it's done well, it allows me to experience something that I've never experienced before, and it takes me to places that I've never been.
Yeah.
And you can't really put a price tag on that. So is it maybe as important as curing cancer? No, but it has its place, and it does have an important part of our history and our culture.
Yeah, I agree. I too am a little bit. I'm a bigger fan of the old time movie stars. I'm a big fan of Rita Hayworth and
Yeah.
Greta Garbo and Marilyn Monroe. People that I wasn't even alive when they were at their heyday. Um, so I like old Hollywood to a large degree. I'm a huge fan of the movies of the 40s, 50s, and 60s. Um, it seems today that there's still a lot of glamour, but there's also a lot of like today, like you hear like actors and misbehaving and stuff. But that's always been that way.
Oh yeah.
Ever since movies began, there have been actors that were uh famous. Marlon Brando was known as a brawler. Humphrey Bogart, and now I can't think of his name. It'll come to me. Katharine Hepburn cheated on her husband with him.
Spencer Tracy.
Spencer Tracy. He was well known for being a dick.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the way he carried himself, he was a dick, but he was dressed in a perfect suit.
Yeah. And Errol Flynn liked the little girls.
Yeah.
And none of that ever came out until years and decades later, actually.
I'll tell you, and this is just a quick story. And this was in my much younger days, where I was not as enlightened as I was today. But I freely admit that when it came out that Rock Hudson was gay, at the time I was devastated, because I was like, well, how could that be? It's
Yeah.
Rock Hudson, you know? Um, so, it's a man's man, Rock Hudson, little did I know at the time that like how much of Hollywood, how much, homosexuality there was. And, back then people were forced to really, keep it hidden and whatnot. But it just goes to show, like, I clearly remember that when that came out, what a big deal it was.
It was a
Today
huge
people
deal.
find out that some actor is gay and they're like, well, yeah, we knew that.
Yeah. Today it's more when an actor says that they're straight that we're surprised.
Yeah, like today it's like, that's why I don't know why Tom Cruise goes to such, lengths to hide the fact that he's gay. Like, who cares anymore,
Well, that's just it. The stigma isn't there. And when you look at somebody like Sal Mineo,
Yeah.
who had to live in the closet for years and years, even though everybody in Hollywood knew it and knew that he was having a relationship and affair with James Dean. Nobody talked about it at the time.
Well, that's because they didn't live in an era where people felt that everything was everybody's business. Like, there's always been Hollywood gossip. Like, we didn't just invent it, But, back in the day, like, nobody really cared. If somebody acted up in public, that was different. But what happened behind closed doors was really nobody's business.
Well, yeah, Hedda Hopper was, I think, probably the first real popular gossip columnist for Hollywood.
Yeah, probably.
And even then, she never actually really mentioned names. She'd say, a certain actor that you may know from such and such was rumored to have done such and such,
Right.
So, she left it vague enough that she wouldn't get sued, but specific enough that people knew who she was probably talking about.
Yep. Speaking of glamour, Scott, I was trying to Google it the other day. I couldn't remember the year, but if you've watched the Oscars fairly regularly, there was one year, this might have been maybe 20 years ago, where they were doing a special specifically about actresses, and the curtains opened, and it was like 5 generations of actresses. It was like a teenage um, Drew Barrymore all the way up to like a Hedy Lamarr who had to be 90 at the
Yeah.
time. Do you remember that?
I vaguely remember that.
That was
Yes.
the coolest thing I ever saw, because it was about 60 of them, and they slowly panned over all of them with their name. And it was, like I said, Drew Barrymore was maybe 13 or 14 at the time. And it was, Hedy Lamarr, Betty Davis was still alive. Like, all these actresses were still alive. And I was like, oh my God. And back then, it never even occurred to me to tape it. That
Oh,
has
yeah.
to exist somewhere. I am on a mission now to find it.
Oh, I'm sure that's on YouTube somewhere. It's got to be.
Yeah. But that was cool, because that was like old Hollywood and new Hollywood, all glamored together all at one time. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, I would like to see them do more of that. Although now, really, there's really nobody from old Hollywood anymore.
Yeah, I can't even think. The last one, when Peter Jackson remade King Kong.
Yeah.
At the very end, Fay Wray was supposed to say it was Beauty killed the Beast. She was 96 at the time, and she passed away like 3 days before they were supposed to shoot that scene.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, that would have been cool.
You know what's funny is people like Robert De Niro and Al Pacino and Meryl Streep, they're now starting to be looked at as old Hollywood.
Yeah. Jack Nicholson, Robert Redford, Michael Douglas. Yeah, you're right.
And how old does that make you feel?
Oh, God. Yeah, okay, moving on.
Yeah,
let's talk about the actual Oscars for this year.
Yeah, because I've actually got them all up. Now, how many of them have you seen?
So let's see. Out of Best Picture, I did not see Brooklyn. I did not see Bridge of Spies, and I did not see The Big Short. I saw the other 5.
Okay, I've seen Bridge of Spies, Mad Max, and The Martian. I have not seen the others.
Okay, fair enough.
But I have to say something. On a couple of episodes back on Weekday Matinee with Jerry, we were talking about Oscars, and we were talking specifically about Mad Max. Well, Jerry was. And then we got into a discussion about how much we both loved Mad Max Fury Road and thought it was one of the best movies of the year, and that it would probably be overlooked at the Oscars. And the fucking thing got 11 nominations.
Right?
I did not. That was probably the biggest surprise for me this year, was Mad Max getting as many nominations as it did.
I was very surprised to hear that. I expected it to do well in the technical awards, because it was just the wizardry of how he filmed it was astonishing,
Yeah.
So I expected it would be in, sound editing, cinematography, like all those awards. But you're right. For Best Director and Best Picture, I was surprised.
Yeah, I certainly didn't expect Best Picture or Best Director. And Director, I'm surprised that Tarantino was not nominated.
I was a little surprised by that, but I think there is some degree of anti-Tarantino bias in Hollywood. But I think that's a hell of his own making, just because of the way he carries himself.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I'm Quentin Tarantino. That's great. Like, you don't hear George Miller, walking around going, "Hey, I'm George Miller." So I think that might have something to do with it. I don't know, though.
Well, I think you're probably right about that. And it's funny because Hollywood is probably the least humble place on the face of the planet.
Right.
But unless you pretend to be humble, you're not going to get shit. Unless you're Leonardo DiCaprio, then you don't get shit anyway because you just always have bad luck.
Well, I was waiting for one. I figured one of us would bring him up. You mentioned early in the show about tokens, and I wonder if it's at this point there's been so much and so many memes and so much about the fact that DiCaprio hasn't won, that if he does win, are people going to look at it as like it's like, okay, here's your goddamn Oscar award,
Yeah.
I mean, the performance was great. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not taking anything away from Leo. I'm really not. I like him. I didn't used to, but he grew on me over the years. Like, I gained some respect for him over time.
Yeah. The first thing that I remember seeing him in was What's Eating Gilbert Grape.
Sure.
And I was just blown away by his performance in that. I thought it was one of the best performances I had seen at the time. And the fact that he was so young and was able to make his character so believable, I thought it was a fantastic, fantastic performance. And I've been a fan of his ever since. And has he been in some shitty movies? Yeah, Blood Diamond, that was pretty bad.
Yeah, The Beach. Wasn't a fan.
And yeah, but he's done some fantastic stuff. I mean, anything he's done with Scorsese has been excellent.
Absolutely, I agree.
And I don't know why that he's been looked over, because there have been years I really do think he should have won. For The Aviator, I think he should have won.
Yeah, for me, that was the biggie. Like, when he didn't win for that, I was like, wow. Like, I was very surprised that year.
What do you think that is? Is there something that maybe we don't know about him, that Hollywood does not like him or does not want to give him an award?
Well, I don't know. We could speculate all day long. Look, Peter O'Toole is a legendary actor who has never won an Academy Award. He's been nominated a zillion times, but so who knows? Like, in any given year, there was just that one person that edged him out, that the Academy felt was a little more deserving. Leo, you don't really hear anything scandalous about him. You don't really hear about him being a jerk. But then again, who knows? Maybe drowns puppies in his spare time, and someone found out about it. I don't know.
Well, he's very rarely in the news as far as gossip goes. And if it is, it's usually, oh, well, here's Leonardo DiCaprio on the beach with 20 models. Right. That's usually what you hear. I've never heard him spoken about in a negative way, or heard about him doing something negative to fans, or being a dick on set or anything like that. I mean, I've never heard it. It very well may be that he is, but in this day and age, you sneeze wrong and it's on TMZ for the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I really don't know. Who knows?
Here's the thing. As much as I would like to see him win that Oscar, I'm really kind of torn on that, because I thought Eddie Redmayne did a fantastic job in The Danish Girl. He's...
Go ahead. No, I was just going to say I haven't seen it, but I've heard good things, and I'm a fan of Eddie Redmayne. I loved him in The Theory of Everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a big fan. So it doesn't surprise me that you're telling me that he was good in the film.
And while I haven't seen Trumbo, I love Bryan Cranston in anything. So
yeah, me too.
I would give it to him, even though I haven't seen it, just because I like him so much. His Malcolm in the Middle days, I remember fondly, because he was just so perfect in that.
Yeah.
To see him go from comedy then into Breaking Bad was really, it just shows the the depth of his talent and that he can really do anything.
Yeah, I mean, not I haven't seen. I only saw The Martian and The Revenant of the Best Actor nominees, but just looking at the list of actors based on their work alone, I could see it going to any of them. I like Michael Fassbender. So we'll see. I think you might be right. I think Eddie Redmayne might be the dark horse here, but I think Leo's finally going to get it. I really do. You heard it here, folks.
I would be very surprised if he didn't get it. I think the only thing that would surprise me more if him not getting it is if Matt Damon got it. But Hollywood seems to really like Matt Damon. So
yeah, they do.
You never know.
They do.
And I can understand because he's charming and he's attractive, and you don't hear any bad stories about him either. He's outspoken and opinionated, but not in the way that, say, Tarantino is opinionated. He's very self-deprecating, and I mean, he's the kind of a guy that you really would like to go and have a beer with.
Absolutely.
At least I would. Now, for actress in a leading role, I have not seen any of these movies.
The only one I saw was Room, which is phenomenal, by the way. Like, if you get a chance to see that movie, see it. Brie Larson was fantastic in it. It's a very different kind of movie. I'm not sure if you know the premise of it.
I don't. I haven't heard anything about it,
it's
honestly.
This woman and her son are kept captive for years in like this 10 by 10 shed by this guy, and it's how she keeps herself from losing her mind and how she keeps her son from going crazy. Then there's the second act of the film is they escape from the room, and it's how do people who have spent 10 years in one room, how do they even adjust to the outside world?
Wow, that sounds really
two
good.
different things, two different movies. It was really cool. I liked it. You should see it. Jennifer Lawrence, I like Jennifer Lawrence, but I'm a little weary of her. I'm like, all right, Jennifer Lawrence is freaking everywhere. Like, okay, enough. I don't dislike her. I'm just kind of tired of her.
Yeah, she kind of keeps getting rammed down her throat, so to speak.
I wouldn't mind.
I know you would.
I'd be okay with that. I'm not gonna lie. I did look at the naked pictures.
Oh, and there you have it, an Imaginarium exclusive.
Not gonna lie.
Yeah, I would go for Charlotte Rampling in that just because she's been around forever and I really like her.
Yeah, I'd be okay with that. I don't know anything about. I can't even say her name. Saoirse Ronan in Brooklyn. I don't even know who she is. I don't even know what that movie is. So
I'm assuming it's about Brooklyn, but I could be wrong. And I probably am. It's probably like about a dog named Brooklyn or a woman named Brooklyn. And who knows? Maybe I'll just shut up about that. Oh, actor in a supporting role.
Wait, did we skip over Best Director on purpose? Or we just didn't get to it yet?
We're getting to that.
Okay. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to disrupt your flow.
I'm just going down this list as it's shown here.
Okay.
It's actor in a supporting role, and I've seen Creed and Bridge of Spies. And of the two, I would probably go with Sylvester Stallone for Creed.
Yeah, me too. I saw Creed. Like I said, I saw Spotlight, and I saw The Revenant. Tom Hardy was okay in The Revenant. Like, he was good, but I didn't think, when I saw he was nominated for Best Supporting Actor, I was like, really? I was like, he was good. But I was like, it didn't stand out to me.
Yeah.
I do have a soft spot for Sylvester Stallone. I like him, and I think he was phenomenal in Creed because he was so vulnerable.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, Rocky is old and broken.
Yeah. It was a very surprising performance from him because I never really considered him a very good actor. And he's certainly gotten better. I mean, he was fantastic in Rocky, but I mean, it just didn't really seem like it was much of a stretch for him to play that type of a person.
Yeah, I buy that. Yeah, I know. Look, he is what he is. He made a great career for himself, playing to his strengths.
Yeah.
The action hero, muscle man. He was good at it.
And so when you see his performance in Creed and how fragile, he acts, it's really, it kind of takes you by surprise. And I think that more than anything is why he got that nomination. Not that he didn't deserve it, but I think it was more the surprise of how good he was.
Yeah, no, I'll buy that.
And as far as Tom Hardy, I like watching him, but I've never really considered him a great actor. He's adequate. I know people raved about him in Mad Max, but I don't know. I just didn't. I just didn't see it.
Here's what I felt about Mad Max. Like, you could have put any rugged, handsome guy in that mask and put him on the car, and he would have been fine.
Yeah.
I mean, he wasn't a bad choice, and you're right. He was good in it, but I'm like, real best. What are people raving about? I didn't get it. But
yeah, and I think a lot of that has to do with the writing. I think if there's a weakness about that movie, it's just how poorly his role was written.
Yeah, I'll buy it. Yeah, you're right.
Actress in a supporting role, we finally get to a nomination for The Hateful Eight with Jennifer Jason Leigh.
Yeah, I thought she was great.
Mara Rooney.
I'm a big fan of hers. Although I didn't see the movie.
Yeah, I'm not even sure I know what Carol is about. Now,
if I'm not mistaken, it was with Cate Blanchett, and who plays. It's like they have like a lesbian relationship in an era like we were talking about, where that really wasn't acceptable, but it's like very subtle, like the way it's played. It's not explicit, but that's all I know about it.
Well, that's certainly a lot more than I knew about it.
Yeah. Rachel McAdams was good in Spotlight.
Mm-hmm.
And I like her. Again, this category is tough because I only saw 2 of the movies, so for all I know, maybe Kate Winslet was phenomenal in Steve Jobs. I don't know.
Well, I actually really kind of like Kate Winslet, and she does a pretty good job in most everything that she does. Outside of The Danish Girl, I haven't seen these, and I liked Alicia Vikander in The Danish Girl. I thought she gave a really good performance. I'm not sure it was necessarily Oscar worthy. I don't know. Maybe they were just for actresses in a supporting role this year. I'm not sure. Women's roles in Hollywood are always tough. So I was never actually really interested in seeing the Steve Jobs movie. I saw part of the Jobs movie that Ashton Kutcher was in, and I saw maybe 20 minutes of it, and I thought, well, this is enough. I don't really need to see any more of Steve Jobs movies anywhere, period. So when the other Steve Jobs movie came out, I just can't put myself through that. Even though I liked Michael Fassbender, I just couldn't put myself through it. Because Steve Jobs is really just kind of an unlikable person. I mean, now you talk about somebody who's a dick. Steve Jobs was a dick.
Yes.
I really don't want to spend 2 hours watching. And I know this, yeah, I was just about to say, I really don't want to spend 2 hours watching a dick. but I know people are going to say, yeah, right. Um, oh, well, watching an asshole is much better. Watching somebody like Steve Jobs, a very unlikable person. Yeah,
And
that's
plus, I
it.
think, I mean, I saw the version with Ashton Kutcher, and I saw, I'm like, I really don't. What else is there to know about the guy? I mean, I'm like, yeah. Again, I'm sure Kate Winslet was good. I'm sure Michael Fassbender was good, but I'm at the point where I really don't care. I
Yeah,
mean, I know, I admit, full disclosure, folks, I am not a fan of Apple and their products, but again, I know he's a central figure in American business, and being in the IT industry, I can never minimize his importance in my industry, you
right.
know. But again, I'm at the point where, all right, what else do I really need to know about the guy? I nothing. I don't care.
All right, let's do the writing stuff.
Okay.
Uh,
Just real quick before you do that, I just
uh-huh.
want to touch on like animated film. If
Oh, okay.
anybody
Yeah, sure.
if anybody hasn't seen Inside Out, it is fantastic. And Anomalisa was really cool.
I heard
I
so
wasn't
many good things about
oh,
that.
it's sort of right up my alley because it's different. I wasn't going to pay like theater money to see it, but then a friend of mine had passes. What a cool movie. It's stop motion animation, but it's so smooth that you want to believe that they're real. And I just thought that the story was so cool. If anybody hasn't seen it, I encourage them to see Anomalisa. It was neat.
Isn't that a written by Charles Kaufman?
Yes. Yes, it was directed by co-directed by Charlie Kaufman and Duke Johnson.
Okay. So right there, that should tell you that it's going to be interesting because I mean, I like everything they do, but it's always worth checking out because it is just so interesting and out there. They have a very
Absolutely.
unique way of looking at stuff.
Oh, and it comes out in this movie. It really does. So that's all. I just
Okay.
wanted to throw that out there.
All right. Well, for the adapted screenplay, The Big Short, Brooklyn, Carol, The Martian, and Room. And I saw The Martian, and I didn't think that was. I liked The Martian, but I just didn't necessarily think it was worth a writing Oscar.
Yeah, I agree. Again, I saw Room, which I thought was really cool. What I will say about the Big Short, I didn't uh, I didn't see it, but I know what it's about. Obviously.
Yeah.
So I guess you have to consider that. This one again is tough for me too. So I'm gonna go with Room just because out of the two that I saw, I liked it.
Well, just from what you described, that sounds really up my alley, and
Yeah,
I have no doubt I would love that movie.
yeah, I'm
That
sure you
just
would.
really piqued my interest. And original screenplay, and here's another category that I thought Tarantino would get into.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm telling you, man, there's some kind of thing about him. Like I think he just rubs people the wrong way. I really do.
but we have Bridge of Spies, Ex Machina or Machina. I never know how to
Ex
pronounce that.
Machina.
Machina. Macarena. Inside Out, Spotlight, and Straight Outta Compton. Now, Straight Outta Compton, I guess, is really the movie that touched off the whole everything was too white this year because it was really ignored for basically all the other categories. And honestly, I don't know if it was good enough to be nominated. I haven't seen it, but I've heard mixed things about it, so I don't know.
Well, this is my thing. Like I haven't seen it either. Um, I it just wasn't something that interested me. I will probably see it. I'll watch it on DVD or Netflix or something, but much more so from a history of music perspective.
Yeah.
I'm not into rap and hip hop, but I am well aware of the musician, the artists, NWA. I'm aware of their impact on the world of music.
Yeah.
So from that standpoint, it is something that interests me. But again, you're right. Like maybe after I see it, maybe I'll say, well, they were right. It just wasn't as a movie. It just wasn't up there. Like you're going up against Mad Max and The Revenant and Bridge of Spies. Like okay, a movie about the history of rap. Okay. I'm sure
Yeah.
it's a decent flick, but okay.
I'll catch it on Netflix or DVD, like you said. But the problem with seeing everything now, well, first of all, you've got the best picture. You're up to 10 movies up for best picture. With the way that ticket prices are, it gets expensive. I don't like going out to movie theaters to see movies anymore, period. People with their phones and talking and kids, and yet, when you spend that kind of money, you don't want all the other extraneous distractions. So I don't go out to the theater a lot anymore. Even if I did, it just racks up the money. It gets expensive.
Oh, it sure does.
So I really wish I would go back to 5 pictures. I don't know why they ever went to 10 pictures nominations. It just
because people were bitching that it's always the same thing. Like you nominate 5, well, the person that thought number 6 should have been nominated is gonna bitch. You expanded it to 10, like this year. Okay, there's only 8, so which gives me hope that they weren't gonna nominate 2 more just to fill in the gaps.
let's see. Well, directing. The Big Short, Mad Max, The Revenant, Room, and Spotlight.
I'm gonna go with George Miller. Just because I'm a fan and the way he pulled it off. That's just my reason. I mean, all the others I think are very worthy.
Yeah.
It's a tough one. I like Inarritu, but it's very rare to get one, 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
And I thought Spotlight was really well done because, it's about the Catholic Church sex scandal and pedophilia scandal, but it was not handled in a lurid way. It was I felt a very straightforward, factual approach to a very big and yet very sensitive topic. It could have been handled in a much more lascivious way, and it wasn't, So I thought that the director, Tom McCarthy, handled it in a very graceful way, handled very difficult and sensitive subject matter in a really good way. So I could vote that way too, and still be okay with it.
Were there any movies that you thought would get nominations that didn't?
I don't think so. Then again, in 2015, I didn't see nearly as many movies overall. Forget about the theater, just overall as I would have liked. So that's kind of a hard one. I think the Oscars. I think they did a good job this year. Off the top of my head, I can't think of anything where that I felt someone was snubbed or left out.
Yeah, I don't think I can. There was anybody who I thought was snubbed purposely. I am surprised that Crimson Peak didn't get nominations for art direction and costumes and set design. I thought for sure.
Okay, I'll buy that. Yep.
that they would have gotten at least one of them, because it was probably the most beautiful movie I saw this year. Even if I'm kind of iffy on the movie itself, I thought it was really just kind of cliched, and I saw the entire ending, 5 minutes into the movie. So there really wasn't much of a surprise or tension for me, but it looked beautiful.
Yeah,
And
it was. I liked it. It's one of those things where when I first saw it, I really loved it, and then on second thought, I was like, oh, maybe I put too much into it. They were saying that the big snub, if you will, at least according to Entertainment Weekly, was that Ridley Scott was not, nominated Best Director for The Martian. I'm like, okay, I'm not sure that was a snub.
yeah, I don't think that was a snub. It was a good movie. It wasn't a great movie.
I mean, as far as direction goes, I mean, it was good, but again, and it's so funny, Scott, how many times have we talked about how subjective any kind of art is?
Yeah.
I would love to see like the ballots themselves, like to see what oddballs there were. Like, what oddball movie did somebody vote for that they thought was Best Picture worthy? I'm sure there's something really wacky that, where you're like, what, really? That?
Take their voting credentials away.
Yeah. But again, it's really subjective. I loved Crimson Peak. There were a lot of people that didn't like it. I'm like, all right, well, okay. And what of it,
Yeah. This is actually going to come out the day after the Oscars, so I guess we'll find out how well we actually pick things on Sunday.
Okay, so I'll tell you what. Maybe this will be fun, like, because now we'll have it recorded for posterity. Maybe you and I, like, we'll just run down real quick. We'll just make our votes on the categories that we just talked about, and then we'll see how well we did.
Okay.
All right, so Best Picture, I'm going to go with The Revenant. Best Director, George Miller for Fury Road. Best Actor, I will pick Eddie Redmayne. Best Actress, Brie Larson for Room. Best Supporting Actor, Sylvester Stallone. Best Supporting Actress, I'm going to pull it out of thin air. I'm going to say Jennifer Jason Leigh. Best Animated Film, Inside Out. Best Original Screenplay, I will go with Spotlight. And Best Adapted Screenplay, I will pick Room.
Okay. All right. Best Picture, Mad Max, Fury Road. Best Actor, I'm going to go with Eddie Redmayne. Best Actress, I'll go with Charlotte Rampling. Best Supporting Actor, Sylvester Stallone. Best Supporting Actress, I'm going to go with Jennifer Jason Leigh. I think she's going to get a nod. That will be Tarantino's consolation prize. Rating, Original Screenplay, I'm going to go with Bridge of Spies. Adapted Screenplay, since I really only saw one, I'm going to go with Room, just based on what you said about it. And Animated Feature, I'll go with Anomalisa. And for directing, Mad Max Fury Road.
All right. You heard it here, folks.
That's right. And this was recorded on February 25th, and it's 6:45, so you can't say that we actually recorded it right after the Oscars and we picked everything right. Because somebody's going to think that.
Of course they will.
And I am far, far too lazy to edit everything right after a 12-hour Oscar telecast.
Exactly. That should have a separate category. How far over do you think the Oscars will go? Most boring acceptance speech.
It would actually be a really good show. So we'll have to do that next year.
Sure.
There's only one thing that I want to say before we wrap this up. I don't think the Oscars are going to get as many television viewers this telecast, because You've got your Grindhouse nights at Cafe Z this weekend. Everybody's going to be there.
Yes, my event though is actually the day before. We're on the 27th. The Oscars are the 28th, but maybe everyone will be hungover.
Oh, I have no doubt about that.
And we're still recovering from yet another fun event. I will be sure to post many highly inappropriate pictures after the event.
Well, we would be very disappointed. Even I would be disappointed if you didn't post inappropriate pictures.
I'm sure.
Well, if you like the Imaginarium, go ahead and rate us and leave a review on iTunes. And we will be on the Google Play Store as soon as Google starts doing the podcasts. So I'm happy about that. And check out the other podcasts we have at thesupernauts.com. And until next time, may all of your journeys be filled with pure imagination.
Hooray for Hollywood. They hire fellas whose physiques are good. And then they tell them they're the perfect shape men to act like ape men. And they convince them they